The topic is new international trends in Africa and in China, with specific emphasis upon Zaire and Nigeria. And we're talking to Dr. LMadu2, who is the president of Pan-Africa, chief of protocol, and of course chairman of the Nigerian Patriotic Front. Dr. LMadu2, before we had our first commercial break, you were talking about some of the developments in China. And let's see if we can pick up at that particular point so that we might be able to fully explain the international trends dealing with China.
Okay, so like I was saying, when Mao Zedong died in 1976 and Zhou Enlai, a new group of thinkers took over power. And like I said, the cause of the Cultural Revolution was disagreement, philosophical and economic disagreement between the factions in the Chinese Communist Party. One side, with Mao Zedong and his wife, Jiang Jing, and former Defense Minister Lin Biao, that favored politics first and economics second. Then you had another group led by Liu Xiaoji, who was president, with also Deng Xiaoping, who was vice premier and chairman of general secretary of the Communist Party, who believed that economics first, politics second. So there was a clash of ideology. So the Cultural Revolution was unleashed by Mao and his wife and Defense Minister Lin Biao to crush those, proponents of economics first and politics second. So with the death of Mao in '76, he handpicked a man called Wago Fong. Wago Fong was the chief of the secret police, in place of Deng Xiaoping, who would have been the rightful person. So when Wago Fong didn't have the revolutionary credentials, he wasn't part of the Long March. You remember the Long March, which all these participated in. So those who favored economics first, Deng Xiaoping supporters in the army, led by Marshal Ye Jianying, carried out a coup, that toppled Mao Zedong's wife, head of the Gang of Four, who were trying to take over power, and then brought Deng Xiaoping back as the vice premier under Chairman Wago Fong. Within a year, Deng Xiaoping engineered his own comeback, as the paramount leader of China, and removed, Wago Fong. So when he came back, he introduced what he had on the table long time ago that was creating the problem with Mao, called the four modernizations: modernizing agriculture, defense, science and industry, and health, to bring China up to date. So those four modernizations is what led China to where it is today in economic boom. So when going back again, when Deng came in and started, this modernization, he carefully chose not to take the title of chairman of the Chinese Communist Party or even premier. He just, appointed one of his proteges called Hu Yaobang, as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, but while himself maintaining, the title of chairman of the Central Military Committee. In China, whomever is chairman of the Central Military Committee really is the ruler of the country, no matter whatever title somebody else has. So Hu Yaobang fell out with Deng Xiaoping because he couldn't crush the pro-democracy movement in China. Deng instead appointed another guy called Zhao Ziyong, who was toppled after the Tiananmen demonstrations about 8 years ago. That's when the current leader, Jiang Zemin, was appointed by Deng Xiaoping to become president of China and vice chairman of the Central Military Committee and general secretary of the Communist Party. All three titles, while he remained in the background. Jiang Zemin was, the mayor of Shanghai, a Russian-trained engineer who is forward-looking like Deng Xiaoping himself. So what has been happening since Jiang Zemin became, president and chairman of the military committee, even though Deng was alive, was consolidating power. Deng Xiaoping wanted to make sure that when he dies, there was actually, a successor without the internecine fighting that erupted after Mao died. So he spent time grooming Jiang Zemin, giving him all the full powers, and at the same time, Li Peng, who is the prime minister. So that when Deng died, people thought there would be some succession problems like happened before. So, but that didn't happen because Jiang already consolidated power, with the help of Deng Xiaoping, and Li Peng, is prime minister. though there might be some challenges to Jiang Zemin in the future, possibly coming from a man called General Yang Shangkun, who was president and a veteran of the Long March, and his brother, General Yang Baibing. That might happen. But at this particular time, you have what you call a collective leadership. You know, in China, with Jiang Zemin, like they say, as the core, you know, of the leadership, which includes Li Peng, Prime Minister, and Qiao Shi, who used to be chief of the secret police. You know, so as the Chinese economy, you know, grew, you know, China's importance, you know, in the international arena also grew. You know, so that's precisely what's happening now. China has gone to a stage where because of Deng Xiaoping's economic policies, you know, the country is booming. You know, and then add Hong Kong next year, in 1997, when the British, you know, leave. You're actually talking of, you know, a huge economy here.
So we're following the proper course dealing with China, do you believe? And what else could we do in order to become a greater part of what's going on in China today?
Well, I think the administration is playing, I think, a careful and intelligent game with China. Before they say, well, you have to comply with human rights, all this and that. But you see, China is too big for us to threaten, for them to capitulate on what they call on human rights issues. So the United States had no alternative, you know, but to cooperate in the interest of economic development. You have, you know, a lot of American companies investing billions of dollars in China, and those interests have to be protected. So you couldn't push the Chinese government too hard on human rights while these, you know, American businesses are in China, you know.
And so we've sort of accommodated to on this human rights issue, but we recognize that there's much more for us. It's almost as if there's a new open door kind of attitude toward China coming from the Americans. Would it be safe to say that?
Precisely. In fact, right now we have a trade deficit with China, the way we've had with Japan. And now some members of Congress are calling on, you know, the administration to rectify that, where Chinese companies and governments will buy more U.S. things and open more of their markets to us.
Very good. Dr. Madu, we've got about 15 to 20 seconds before the end of this segment of the program. And when we come back, we'll talk about Africa with emphasis on Zaire and Nigeria during this last segment. And we'll be back with you following this short commercial break.